So the Eminence and Shadow Season 1 comes to an end in the most Sid fashion possible. He goes back to basics, he's got a couple of crowbars, he literally dual wields crowbars in the middle of a fight that for these two is completely life and death. They're giving it their all and he's having fun because a box of tools exploded in front of him and he realized he can go back to where he first started out, beating bandits with crowbars. And to see the biggest tease that I think the show has ever given us, we get the next I Am Atomic, right? And it was building up into such a beautiful fashion. Every time he goes I Am Atomic, his voice actor goes that extra mile. It's that perfect blend of, am I supposed to laugh or am I supposed to say this is the most incredible thing I've ever heard? Probably both. He says I, he says M, but then he stops. He's like, no. Maybe another time. It is the biggest tease ever, and if that doesn't get you hyped up to see a season 2, I don't know what will. This was an absolutely banger of an episode. Here I was thinking it was going to be a 1v1, we had Beatrix, we had Shadow, it was looking rather good. Didn't even cross my mind that Iris, after everything she's been through with Shadow, would want to jump in the ring herself and turn it into a 2v1. Did it change much? No. But it made for a much more compelling fight, especially when you have a flaming sword of death and a very agile elf lady who's cutting fools to pieces normally, but now is barely able even to touch Sid, as he's basically saying can't touch this. Now, I do have a full live reaction to today's episode available on my Patreon, so if you want to see that full uncut thoughts and full on hype, head on over there and consider supporting, because this was an absolutely incredible episode to follow. But I like what this episode did as a kind of closer. Does it wrap everything up? Of course not. It's an ongoing source material. It's an ongoing anime that's going to get another season, right? So ultimately, you don't want to tie up everything because there's still more to tell. But in terms of a final hurrah, does it end on the biggest bang possible? Yes. The only thing it might have missed is another atomic, but it made sense to not actually do it there. It's initially a shock because you're just like, are you kidding me, Sid? You're actually going to tease us like this? But it makes sense because it really puts into perspective his power compared to theirs. Obviously, there's a lot of funny moments, like the fact that he literally breaks chins and snaps spines and maybe has some questions of, I wonder if I went too far. It's like, of course you did, Sid, you are an absolute lunatic. But this was absolutely incredible. This show has had incredible action, this show has had incredible funny moments, and I think what this episode did was it kind of brought everything that the Eminence and Shadow has shown us up to this point together. We know about the Shadow organization, we know about Shadow Garden, we know about the conspiracies and the cult in the background. At the end of the day, for Sid, all this was for him to look cool, to continue on his play, and by the end of it, he realized, maybe I should be a little more in the shadows next time. If you really look at, like, average young man, everything about him, he was like the perfect character that he was making, that he was about to slip into the darkness. But of course he had to jump in and be Shadow once again, and it was really great. I actually thought this was probably the best produced episode out of all 20. I mean, if you really want to go out of your way and nitpick some frames, you easily could do that, like with any show. But I think what was really impressive was the 3 distinct fighting styles and how constantly they were making everything feel so fluid and fast-paced. The thing that actually caught my eye the most was actually Iris and her flaming sword. I think anyone who's watched more than a dozen action anime can say, we've seen fire swords before. They light up the blade and basically, yeah, if you get hit by it, you're gonna feel a little burnt. What I liked about her is that with her rage and anger, not only did it make sense for her to have a weapon like that, but ultimately as she was using that weapon, the entire city was getting engulfed like a volcano was erupting. And what was really nice about it is when she would swing the sword around, right, there would be this curve to the flame. And honestly, I can't remember the last time I've seen a show that's used a flame sword in that way that I was like, okay, she's basically a firebender over here. What is going on? It was a really nice detail that made her feel like her addition to this fight was warranted outside of just being pissed off. And then when it came to Beatrix, she had that more kind of classical, like very precise swordplay. Of course, our boy wasn't even looking, he was just kind of dodging left and right without even breaking a sweat. But it was cool to see both of them team up in terms of how they were trying to defeat him. Did it work out in their favor? No. But for a viewer experience, it was absolutely incredible. I mean, at first, I didn't even believe he was going to go into the atomic, because I was like, okay, yeah, it's the same glow that he typically does, but maybe he's trying to do something else. But then once he actually started to say it, and his voice actor was even more into it than the previous times, I was really excited for him to then just be like, not today, come back for season 2, and I'm like, you little bastard. But it was nice because it really sets in motion some interesting plot lines for the next batch of episodes. We literally have our girl, 666 now, who ends up getting completely stripped down. She loses that burger wrapper. It's absolutely soul-crushing for her, but now she's officially a part of the Shadow Garden organization. Iris feels like she's a little broken. Honestly, the more she loses to Shadow, or the more Shadow annoys her, it feels like her mentality is getting a little more twisted and a little more shattered to the point that she's not all there in the head anymore. But then again, maybe that's just me looking into something they're not trying to go for, but I don't know, there's something a little crazy about her right now, and her defeats are piling on, especially when it comes to Cid. Though I have to say, the most Eminence and Shadow thing I think this episode presented was you get to see a paper, and you see Shadow. You see his face is fully there. Of course, the hood's covering a bit of it. And then the next day on the train, Cid's just casually on the train. No one even bats an eye. That's like the most Eminence and Shadow thing ever, and it is so funny. But I like the fact that, like, you even have, like, this crazy yandere paper girl who's, like, just stabbing the papers, has it all over her walls and ceiling. Like, there's a lot of good teases for what's to come here, and I'm really excited to see where they're gonna go. In terms of an entertainment factor, 10 out of 10. In terms of plot relevance, they hit a lot of really nice moments that teases more, but also slightly resolve certain things while expanding on others. It just felt like the best of the show, and I think for a lot of people leaving this show, they're just going to be more excited to either wait for the next batch of episodes or jump into the source material because it gets everything right. I really don't think there's much to criticize about this episode. And as a whole, this 20 episode run was some of the most fun you could follow, both of last anime season and this one. Obviously, if you don't like characters like Cid, then yes, maybe the show's a little too much, but I think what this show did a lot better than many shows in a similar genre is that the sidecast was as important as Cid himself. I think Cid was the most entertaining aspect of the show, hands down. He was funny, he was cringe, he was badass at times, and ultimately, whenever he was on screen, you knew it was going to be the ultimate parody of so many different styles of anime. But I like the fact that even when Cid's not on screen, his sidecast is doing plot-relevant things that Cid's not even really acknowledging, but it keeps the actual world and the other parts of the story interesting. So when you're laughing, you're having fun, but when you're not laughing, you're actually interested in seeing where the sidecast is going, which is something I brought up a lot of times in the middle portion of this show's run, where I was like, wow, I'm actually surprised the sidecast remains to be relevant and not just the Cid show. The Cid show is absolutely the best part of it, but you get my point. It will be interesting to see how they repair, because there was definitely a lot of damage done. It kind of reminds me of that time I got reincarnated as a slime in recent seasons. Like, they've literally had to rebuild after giant laser blasts or giant fights, and I kind of feel like this world's going to have a similar situation, given the destruction. They were cutting buildings apart left and right, but that's the Cid show for you. But of course, I'll pass the torch over to you. What did you think of episode 20, the final episode of season 1, and how excited are you for season 2 when we eventually get it? Do let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, ring that bell so you can get notified when I upload on the channel, and of course, as I mentioned, we got that full live reaction available on my Patreon. And while you're there, you can also get yourself a video shoutout like a few we're about to get here. So today, we got Ergohosh, username MK, and Fan Thomas, so I appreciate the support. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.